Is there a CRO metric that you wish people would stop obsessing over?
I was just thinking how funny it would be if I said conversion rate. People don't want to have to learn a new way of doing something for every single journey or website that they're using. And I think that if you don't make things consistent across sites, you're going to force a lot more load onto people's cognition. We're in the business of making accurate predictions. And so we want to predict a test idea and its outcome and how it will yield a result. The most accurate way of doing that is using a Bayesian process, which is essentially just saying, I'm going to take multiple sources of evidence and I'm going to combine them depending on how reliable they are. The role of user research in the CRO process at REO is really about providing reliable evidence on customer experiences to inform and, let's say, finesse the predictions of the CRO consultants. As I said, I'm already a little bit disappointed that we have to type into a chat box. So there's a usability thing there. But yeah, I think the problem is going to be around empathy, like how people feel a bit weirded out, uneasy by AI that exhibits kind of like human characteristics, but doesn't quite get it right. It doesn't hit the mark, and then it doesn't really understand you either. If you want to make a robust research capability, you need domain experts. Like, I know that there's platforms and tools everywhere, but that doesn't mean that anyone can be an expert researcher. Like, you have to know about things like validity, biases, and how to create solid research that will yield reliable results. So I don't necessarily think that just because you have the tools and platforms, you've got the right people in the right positions.
Welcome to another episode of the CRO Hour series by VWO Podcast. Get ready for some fun, insightful conversations about experimentation, user research, and the huge impact that CRO can have in your business. Before we speak to our guest, here's a very quick overview of who we are and what we do. VWO is a leading experience optimization platform that you can use to manage your experimentation program and deliver personalized experiences. One of our most popular offerings is VWO Insights, a platform to analyze user journeys and identify conversion roadblocks. Take a free trial with VWO today and optimize experiences across all your digital platforms. Now, let's jump right into this conversation.
Today, we are delighted to have Mr. Thomas Hein, Research and Insights Lead at REO Digital. Thomas is known for his ability to turn complex problems into clear, actionable insights, making research both engaging and effective. Thomas holds a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD in psychology from Goldsmiths, London University, which adds a strong foundation to his research expertise. Right? Join us as Thomas shares his valuable insights and experiences in this field. Hi, Thomas. Welcome to the CRO Hour by VWO Podcast.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful. How's this beautiful September afternoon going on your end?
You know what? We're actually experiencing some unseasonable warmth through England at this time. It's really nice outside, so I'm looking forward to getting out there.
Wonderful. I was just to get things started, I was looking into your profile. It's intriguing how you've done your bachelor's, master's, and your PhD in psychology. So did you have a plan of getting into CRO, or what was the initial plan as you were trying to build up your educational degrees?
Yeah, no, I had no plan. I've never had a plan about anything, I don't think. No, I just started doing a lot of research. My dad is a psychologist, and so it was a natural thing for me to go and do. I was really just doing a lot of research and publications on cognitive and computational neuroscience and psychology of decision-making and emotions and attention. And so it kind of lends itself quite nicely to the CX space, where we're doing a lot of research on people's experiences and perceptions and decisions while they're online. And so when I started working in this space several years ago now, I was just really applying everything I learned there.
That's wonderful. So is it fair for me to say that it's a offshoot of behavioral science that you are pursuing and sort of implementing it right now in your space?
Yeah, so it's like experimental psychology research, but then there's a lot of different things that are leading to neuroscience. So how the brain works, how we record the brain, and how we model the brain. And so, yeah, I'm bringing that in several respects to this space. So we're talking behavioral insights, but we're also talking about biometrics research and human AI interaction. So there's a lot going on where there's a significant overlap with psychology and neuroscience, for sure.
Amazing. Can you walk us through your process of conducting research and collecting insights at REO?
Yeah, So, I mean, obviously, REO is a agency, a consultancy around CRO, but we also have, analytics, user research. We have a sister brand called Skittle, which is about SEO, and I also head up accessibility. So, we're doing a lot of stuff. But the role of user research in the CRO process at REO is really about, providing reliable evidence on customer experiences to inform and, let's say, finesse the predictions of the CRO consultants. That's what we do in that process. We might evaluate designs once they're implemented. We're going to provide continuous feedback from multiple sources of evidence. So, behavioral analytics, usability testing, interviews, or any other kind of insight we can bring. But we're obviously conducting the independent user research projects as well, and accessibility projects for our clients outside of those CRO testing programs. So we're going to dig a little deeper into, the value of products or the needs of customers and the precision of those, the product direction that they're taking in those kinds of products and projects. So what we do, I mean, this is probably not thought of at all by anyone else in the company, but because I come from that background, I see it as kind of Bayesian process. So what that means is just like that we're in the business of making accurate predictions. And so we want to predict a test idea and its outcome and how it will yield a result. And the most accurate way of doing that is using a Bayesian process, which is essentially just saying, I'm going to take multiple sources of evidence and I'm going to combine them depending on how reliable they are. And so that's what we do. We use CRO prior understanding and experience and expertise. We combine that with UX research and behavioral analytics data. That represents that kind of fresh dynamic updating or the consultant's understanding. So yeah, that's how I perceive it and conceive of it.
Got it. And as you are going through these stages, right, there's multifaceted ways of collecting data, doing your research. What tools would you use for your entire thing? Like, are you using single platforms? You're using multiple tools? Can you just expand on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, tools, yeah. Tools are they're obviously there to make our lives easier, but what I find is they sort of force a specificity on you. And people could become obsessed with methods because of the platforms and the tools. A lot of the content you see, online is talking about methods and how to do them right. And from my perspective, there's so many different ways to achieve research, credible, valid research, and tools allow you to achieve that, right? But we've taken a step back from some of those, dedicated platforms like user testing or something in favor of more flexible video conferencing options, simply because it's easier for people to join us and they're much more predictable, especially for people with different access needs. So we do a lot of assistive technology use testing, and it's much harder for people to come onto a platform that they're not familiar with and figure out how to use it. Pretty much everybody comes with that. So it's kind of like a practical thing, but also a sort of decision to be a little bit tool agnostic. But we do combine specific tools wherever we need them, essentially. But yeah, I think key is to be flexible. A lot of good platforms do a lot of good things, but we don't use that many of them, I don't think.
Sure. Yeah. We often hear about this thing, right? About people, process, and technology coming together for a successful CRO program. So I was just curious to understand, the role. So the role of people and processes on one side, and the role of technology is on the other side. And do you have anything specific to say about how technology is evolving in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more interested in the people side, the process side, but like I'm definitely involved with the technology too. They're kind of inseparable. I've also trained as a sort of a coach, an executive coach, and a part of that is going into our clients' teams and doing, leadership training or team development, enablement and training, and then coaching for performance. So I do find that side really interesting, probably because the psychology background as well. But in terms of technology, if I heard you correctly, the original question was, what's new in the CRO space in terms of technology? Is that
Yeah,
correctly?
yeah. So what's how the three aspects, right? There's people and process which are evolving, and technology is also evolving. I'm just trying to understand what is your view of evolving technology. Has technology caught up to the processes and people? Is technology falling behind? Is it going faster? What is your role of technology overall?
Yeah, I mean, with technology is just too quick, almost, I think, for all people. So, I mean, obviously everyone's talking about AI at the moment and the tools there. And for me, it's very interesting. We already use it in some respects. We do a lot of research with AI, as I mentioned earlier. And then, I mean, I think you're talking with Matt from our company. You'll talk to you more about CRO and the technologies that they're using then. But for me, we're very much still in the world of, setting up analytics capabilities, using some technology to do the testing and the research, and that's it. But I mean, AI is going to change that. It's not changing it yet, I wouldn't say. But we're sort of on the cusp of that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's come into your profile a bit more, right? Now, given your deep research around psychology, I'm very curious to know what psychological factors you think have the biggest impacts on how users make choices online.
Yeah, great question. $1 million question. So, I mean, there's a lot, of course, and many people are familiar with, the general principles for interaction design, the sort of Nelson-Norman group principles. They might include things like, the Gestalt principles, the provenance of psychology, again, comes from how people perceive visual elements, and so things that are close together get semantically grouped together, for instance. Or things like Hicks law, right? So there's the decision time varies as a function of how the number and complexity of choice, and that relates to cognitive load theory, which was developed by Nini Lavis, who was she worked with my supervisor, actually, which is interesting. So cognitive load, how much people can take in terms of the processing of information, related to attention as well. So we only have a certain limited capacity for attention. So resource, you pay attention to something, you can only give out so much. And so that's related to that. I find those really interesting within our space. There's lots of different cognitive bias stuff, but I think if I was going to stick to like common UX heuristics, I'd go with, like consistency and standards, because that one means like people don't want to have to learn a new way of doing something for every single journey or platform or whatever website that they're using. They're going to have their expectations set by other experiences online, and they become very inflexible and rigid, expectations, that is, and beliefs. And I think that if you don't make things consistent across sites, you're going to force a lot more load onto people's cognition. So if you take that back to psychology and neuroscience, the brain, your brain, our brains, they're essentially a really, how would you put it, metabolically expensive prediction engine. That's all that the brain is really trying to do most of the time, is predict what we're just about to experience. So we're not surprised. Like, we don't want to make tragic mistakes like walking off a cliff because we didn't predict that there was a drop, right? So it's quite interesting, actually. So when an organism doesn't need to make any complex decisions, and so that would be our minds, well, they don't need a brain at all. So there's like a really famous neuroscience example of that. It's called a sea squirt. It's an organism that lives in the ocean, and it has a brain, like a really rudimentary brain at the beginning, but it doesn't really need it. So all it does is it uses it to move to a location that's safe. And once it's there, it just eats its own brain. It's too expensive to have this brain. It's not going to use it to do anything wrong. So if we're trying to predict what's going on in our world, we don't want to spend excessive resources on explaining any of our experiences. So online experiences are no different. Like, we don't want to find something surprising or learn something, right? Shouldn't need to be learning things. They should be functionally predictive. And so we don't like, like people don't like uncertainty in any context, really. It just causes anxiety. And so that can lead to discomfort online. And so I feel like how that affects people's decisions and emotions, that can also color and how would you put it, shape people's decisions and beliefs. That's the most interesting stuff to me about online experiences. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. It's very rambling.
It does. It does. Thank you for that. It's fascinating, right? How the human brain works. I was reading that book last week about how the right part of the brain works and left part of the brain works, and how Daniel Kahneman's book is very interesting.
Okay. There's another one called, I think it's called Master and Commander. I've forgotten his name now. Ian something. He's wrote a book on similar things. Right, left brain, hemispheric differences. And Yeah, check it out. Forgotten his name now. I feel ashamed. I went to see him talk. Okay.
What is the name of the book?
I think it's called Master and Commander, something along those lines.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Keep it up. My Livy has walked to this app called Livy, which connects me to libraries, and we'll look this up.
Yeah, have a look.
Wonderful. Will do. You know, we work with different kinds of clients all across the world or all across the region. Have you come across any surprising behavioral insights while you're doing your user research for your clients? Have you ever come across? Would you like to share some of those examples?
Yeah, yeah, it's a big question. I mean, most of the surprising stuff, perhaps disappointingly to the listeners, would not be the CRO domain. I think I've found some surprising things in user research and biometrics research that I could maybe share. So, I mean, even surprise, again, like going back to what I was just saying before, surprise is a really interesting word to use because that is another unit of information content. Surprise is basically like how much you're going to learn from something. It's an alternative way to say, look, there's been a difference between what I expected and what I experienced. So that's quite an interesting way of putting it. But I think surprising behavior insights. So recently I was doing a user research project in our lab using full biometrics. And so it was on people's interactions with a AI agent that a company of a client of ours was developing. And so we wanted to take that beyond traditional user research methods and go into the world of emotional reactions. And so we wanted dynamic ways of recording real-time emotional experiences with the AI agent. And so for me, I was finding a lot of, how to put it, striking insights, linking behavioral insights to emotional insights. And so it was all around trust, reliability, the output of the AI agent, the credibility of the overall product and value. But the interesting thing was that anxiety, which we were tracking with a heart rate biometrics, changes how people interact and the value they perceive they get out of it. And so if we had like these people with very high trust and willingness to give up personal data, and those people were getting much more out of the experience than people who had very low trust and low willingness to give up data. And then these people were not interacting or exploring with the AI agent very much at all. And then we had these people in the middle who were just saying that they felt fine with it. They're fine, we kind of trust it. We don't mind giving our data up. But those people were just as anxious as the people who had low trust in doing this. So what we learned was that, wouldn't have known this without biometrics, but what we learned was that actually people were pretty uncomfortable and anxious about giving up their data, about the interactions with the agent. And there wasn't enough kind of hand-holding and communication from the company about how these decisions were made, where the model was trained, who was going to have their data, and it was financial data too. So it's much more set. And so the insight there, I suppose, which is surprising, is anxiety. You could explain how the value people feel they're getting out of something because they're engaging less with it, they're exploring, they're not having fun with it, and they're not exploring it. And so, yeah, this was a really important finding for us in that project.
Wow. Interesting how anxiety sort of motivates us or pushes us in one or more directions and helps us make those decisions. Interesting. It's easier to think, but I'm sure the models are quite complex once you put in models in, right? The next question is sort of linked to that, right? I mean, you work with very complex models and complex findings. I'm sure the end result is simple, that anxiety influencing behavior. But I'm very curious to know how do you simplify these complex findings for your team? Because there might be people in your team who might not understand such complex models.
Yeah. Good question. I don't even know if I have a really unique way of answering that. There's a lot of what do you put it? A lot of people talk about how to make insights simple, or present them simply at least. I'm definitely agreed with them that the more effort you put in up front, the less effort someone has to do in understanding what the hell you've done. And most people who are doing work like this, or the practitioners involved, are way too familiar with what they're doing to even know how to make it simple. Sometimes they call that the curse of knowledge. And so you know too much about it, and therefore you can't really talk about it in the way that people need to hear it. And that's an experience thing too. But, story first, everyone talks about that, making a story out of insights, some form of narrative, whether it's a journey or whether it's like a logical grouping of pain points and observations and then, impact and suggested actions. That's very common for us to try to use that approach. I also, funny enough, I've tried to import something that I know from a hobby of mine. I like to make, RPG campaigns. So
Interesting.
in RPGs, right?
Yeah.
We have this. Well, you're not supposed to write a story in RPGs. You're supposed to create events, and a lot of the time they center around someone or some group of people like overcoming some big bad, something they're opposing. So I've tried to use that sometimes with the way we frame our presentations. So it's like your customer is trying to achieve something, but they can't do it because of these obstacles and blockers. And if it weren't for that, then they could achieve success. So that's been quite a fun thing to play around with. But always keeping it short. And you got to use graphics, plots, visualizations. If you can segment information and make it easier to understand that way, that's always useful and necessary. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it can be a whole field of how to simplify complex things. In my team, we have created a rule that in a PowerPoint presentation, you cannot have more than 2 pointers. It's just 2 pointers, and that's it. No images, no graphs and all that stuff. Right?
That's a good way of kind of constraining it so that you definitely do something that's simple. As you keep it very much within a framework, it does work. Actually, that's another good thing you can do is use like models and frameworks so you're contextualizing complex findings within something simpler, like you're wrapping it in a model which people can understand. So if I bring this back to user research, there's things like, like people do heuristic evaluation or something. There's a model called the pure evaluation model. I think that works really well because what they're doing is they're saying, hey, look, we've done this long, complicated thing, and we're going to boil it down for you, and we're going to put it into a model that you're going to see across the presentation. So that allows people to understand that easier, to not have to think about it too much, essentially.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Now, Thomas, let's take a step back, right, and go a bit broad. There's so many organizations right now who are collecting data from multiple tools because we started talking about tools, we're collecting so much data with so many insights, and they're trying to form robust research capabilities around those insights. Can you walk us through some key steps or considerations in building such a strong, sort of research foundation, or what organizations can do in terms of steps?
Yeah, it's a big question. A lot of people.
That's what I said. It's broad.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think I understand what you're saying. So you're kind of like you're talking about how to develop a reliable research capacity of functionality within any organization.
So, I mean, given the data and the insights that companies are consuming nowadays with all these tools and mechanisms.
Yeah, I think they're related. So there are people that, I think they're related. So you have all these tools and platforms that are making it easier for people, and you have all of these complicated insights that you might get, and you have to interpret them. And so the first place to start is to remember that the insights are the direction. Like that's the difference between building something good and bad, is the behavioral insights. And so if you want to make a robust research capability, you need domain experts. Like I know that there's platforms and tools everywhere, but that doesn't mean that anyone can be an expert researcher. Like you have to know about things like validity and biases and how to create solid research that will yield reliable results. So I don't necessarily think that just because you have the tools and platforms, you've got the right people in the right positions. So what I've been hearing online is a lot of lost process and specialization. maybe because of the tools and platforms, which is what you've kind of brought it back into. But, we have those people out there. There are behavioral researchers that can acquire those insights for you and interpret them. And so I think what you need to do is to get those people and use those people to get you closer to your customers. It depends on who you are. You could be a product owner or a designer, right? And yeah, sure, you could learn how to do some, generative research with a tool or platform. But really beyond that, I think you need to use those specialists to help you to build connection and empathy with your customers. Without that, you're not really doing research that's focusing on validity and what it means. I've been enjoying some other work of Dr. Nick Fine on posting on this, which is quite interesting, about the democratization of research. I think he's almost on the money with that one. You've got a lot of tools and platforms and people starting to do the research, but not necessarily in a reliable way. So you've got low quality research that's kind of being smuggled in under the guise of, credible research, which is causing issues, I think, within that world. I mean, I don't think that you can still have people like designers and whatever doing certain types of research as long as they're trained, as long as they're not doing the stuff that does require a specialist really to be brought in. So I think when you move beyond that problem, you're going to need, beyond that, well-managed teams of those people working together as well. And again, back to team leadership and training and process and communication, that's going to be essential. So you want to start talking about what impact you can have as a research department. So you've got to focus on the impact you can have, not the output that you can have. So, accelerate learning velocity and ensure that we're building useful, usable experiences. That's what we're there for. So that's what I hear when I hear that question. Because if you're brought in as a researcher at the last minute, just before something is built or launched or something, you've got a real problem. And I don't think that any tool or platform is going to save you at that point. If you're just there at the end doing usability testing, it needs to be more consultative, more proactive, less reactive, and bringing back that scientific rigor. So, moving away from validating assumptions to hypothesis testing. Hard to disagree with that, really.
Absolutely. Improving learning velocity. I've learned a new word today. I'm using this.
They got full of little, they uplift your service provision.
This is amazing. Yeah, this is great. Thank you for that. This is really insightful. Now, the other aspect is digital accessibility for user experience. Now, just wanted to understand, given the importance of digital accessibility for user experience, in your view, how are customers within the UK or Europe embracing it? What comments you have to make around digital accessibility?
Yeah. I mean, interesting that you put Europe in there because that does make a big difference. So, I mean, obviously, it's another big question, but I'll give you that.
Would be great if you could have a split between UK businesses are doing something different.
Well, yeah, exactly. So they are, but it depends on whether they're doing business in different regions. That changes how people react. So, I mean, it's all okay. So in the UK, it's still really nascent, right? So there is a lack of awareness, there's a lack of education, but there are always these kind of people who are champions within those businesses trying to make change. And so everyone we deal with is at some different part of this accessibility journey. And it usually starts with, unfortunately, one person or two people or a little group of feet. So people think accessibility is like a project to be done, but it's a process, right? It's not a project. It's tempting to think of it as like a purely technical challenge because there is some technical aspects to accessibility, but it's a process management challenge, really. It's a change management issue. And so getting organizations to change and to embed permanently accessibility at the right stages, design, development, and testing, that's a really challenging. And so what I'm seeing with our clients is lots of people struggling at different points in that journey, getting buy-in and making change. And so people in the UK, the only people who are starting to do stuff or have done stuff are really in the public sector and finance and insurance because of the Consumer Duty and the FCA and the amendment to the public sector accessibility regulations, which came in from the European Accessibility Act. So they're now being held to WCAG 2.1 standards, which is the guidelines that we're going to adhere to in the UK. But even still, those people, I deal with assisted technology user testing and on a weekly basis, and they're still not doing a good enough job. So there's lots of work to be done in the UK. Now, the people who are doing things are generally people, from a commercial perspective, who are already doing business in the EU or in America. So we have a lot of clients who are acting, but they happen to be in America and the EU because America's quite far ahead in terms of customer litigation. And the EU has this pending kind of countdown of 2025 in June, where the EN 301 549 legislation comes in. So there's a lack of kind of drive and movement. And I think that it's a serious miscalculation. I'd like to see more work being done across the board, but I think that if I was going to, so I've worked with different people and people who have been successful in making change, people who haven't. And so what I see is that, like where to begin, right? We did a CX Circle event, I don't know, I think it was July or something. And we had a client who did the event with, it's all in the public space. So we were working with Mr. and Mrs. Smith, their hotel chain. Mm-hmm. And so they really care about access to digital participants. They were really trying to do a lot of good work. And so the workshop at that event was about how to convince your boss to do something. And it really needs to be answered according to the maturity of the business and their goals. And so you've got an accessibility champion, they're innovating change. And so you need to align your strategy with the business strategy, because otherwise you're just pushing against the closed door. And so not enough is being done. I think that's the problem. It's a cultural problem. It's a change management issue. It's difficult to bring about change in that way. And so you have to meet the people who are in charge where they're at. Bring evidence that maps to their business goals. Make the case for positive accessibility change, because what you get out of this is some people try to fear people, like create fear, and it's not a great motivator. Fear, it's always going to cause sort of resentment and negativity. There's so many positive outcomes to accessibility. So, like the SEO benefits or the market reach or showing a positive image of the brand and the usability. It's all good stuff, and I think that's where I'd like to see people move their honesty in this field. Yeah, so hire experts. If you don't have the people at the beginning, outsource it and then train your team. That's something that we do. We do a lot of training on accessibility, and we coach people to have better accessibility outcomes. That's the part of what we do at REO.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, it's a cultural shift at the end of the day that needs to happen for UK businesses, is what I'm hearing.
For all businesses, it's just that in America, they're just ahead of us, right? And they have this, they have a mindset of, well, it's true. Working on digital accessibility keeps you out of court, right? But I just don't think that's not keeping anyone up at night who are at the top of businesses. They don't really care. So I think that how you really make change is through culture, time with people. And that's across the world.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks for that, Thomas. The next question is something that you touched upon really early on this podcast, is about AI and the role of AI in accelerating research. We are hearing AI everywhere nowadays, right? I'm very curious to know what's your take on this. Like as an expert, what's your take? How are you using AI? What impact does it have on the entire CRO process according to you?
Yeah, it's everywhere, isn't it? Yeah. I found it really baffling when I came out of neuroscience, because in neuroscience, we've been using machine learning and models like this for a very long time. Multi-pattern classification models, machine learning models, dynamic models, and then it just exploded everywhere, and it was just had to frankly keep up to pace. So it's a thorny one right now, I think. It's, look, I mean, I'll tell you what I see. I see a lot of people expanding into a space like a vacuum, like air into a vacuum, and they're creating all of these products that are not necessarily useful, potentially. I think there's a weird way in which it kind of lacks vision as well, the AI space, which I I have like high hopes. I wanted to do something good. But if you think about like the transition from printed media onto the internet, right? It was just the early stages of internet was really quite terrible. I think that's where we are right now. No one really has the vision to manifest some amazing new product. So we've got like people interacting with chatbots, like as if anyone liked them in the first place, chatbots. So yeah, how will it change research? It's probably going to consume the like really, what would you call it, low value market research, user research stuff. So some form of continuous auto insights, like it's really easy to automatically email just schedule them, facilitate some sort of unmoderated interview or survey, and then analyze the data from transcripts, which you could do anyway, and survey data. So insights deck, put it in the repository, like Dovetail, whatever that you're using. But I just think that's the easy target in terms of user research for AI. But you still need to produce high quality evaluative research and even high quality generative. You really do need a human researcher. So I'm not really concerned that it's going to stop doing everything. I just don't see it happening. I can tell you what I find exciting in terms of user research would be something like the space between biometrics and personalization. That's quite a cool, exciting place to be, right?
Personalization is going to be the theme, I think, over the next little while as AI models develop and understands human behavior in more detail, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing there is people, the design world, and like, what's it going to mean for designers? Which I'm not a designer in any respect whatsoever, but I can see it definitely mopping up a lot of those, like layout concepts. It's already fitting into Figma and stuff. I think in certain respects, again, I see it the same way I see research. Like, I don't think it can ever replace a real human designer, but it's definitely going to make those things quicker and easier, increasing the volume of tests, increasing the ease to do concepts and for designers to come in and work their magic. So that sort of stuff seems pretty easy to see coming, I think.
Yeah, wonderful point. I was just thinking about sort of design. My next question is sort of on the same line. So, in your opinion, how can UX research optimize, the design and training of these complex AI models? What do you think? How should it be effectively applied before we start really investing in AI-based products?
Crikey, it's a good question. Well, I tell you what I know, I suppose, because I don't think anyone really knows how that's going to work. But I guess what we want to do is keep it human-centric AI. That's the first step. So we want that to be first and foremost. And the only way we're going to do that really is by integrating everything we know from the surrounding disciplines, like psychology, cognitive neuroscience, sociology, and even anthropology, probably in some respects, into that AI design process. As I said, I'm already a little bit disappointed that we have to type into a chatbot. So there's a usability thing there. I've got how you can speak into some of those chatbots now. That's really quite interesting. That I found quite good. But yeah, I think the problem is going to be around empathy. It's going to be around the uncanny valley. Like how people feel a bit weirded out, uneasy by AI that exhibits kind of like human characteristics, but doesn't quite get it right. It doesn't hit the mark. It's a wholly convincing experience. And I think a problem with that is it's just like a black box. No one knows how they work. No one knows what it's doing. There's no understandability or transparency. And that makes decisions. And then it doesn't really understand you either, really. So I think the key themes are going to be around, it's going to be like data ethics. It's really, really thrilling stuff. Data ethics, regulating AI. You mentioned healthcare earlier. So healthcare and education AI is going to be a big ethical and privacy challenge. And then there's the whole digital inclusivity and cultural insensitivity element to it as well. So I think the question was around how we're going to use a research and how research have a part in that. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. It's like a whole new field. And so we do need to ensure that we are bridging that kind of emotional empathy gap. It needs to resonate with humans. It needs to be empathetic enough, essentially, and artisanal. So that's that's how I see it going for the next few years, is figuring that out.
Yeah, intriguing. The more you think about it, right? I mean, I've read somewhere around human-centric AI of how much human do we need till it's two humans?
Yeah. I mean, I'm all human, and I'm already too full of it, fed up with myself. So maybe it should be a little bit of machine.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely intriguing times we're getting into. And we'll give a good example around how the early days of the internet was. We were people who didn't have a clear idea, but how amazingly it changed the way we interact.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't think we even know. Like, we lack the vision to really see what's coming. I think it's just started, and so it probably will change in some radical way. We can't really predict yet. So it's going to be very interesting.
absolutely. I have a final question, Thomas. Thank you for that. A final question before we move on to something that we call a rapid fire.
Sure.
Just as a research and insights leader, are there any low-hanging fruits that you would advise businesses that they can focus on?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I guess this is going to be colored by my experience, but I mean, first of all, you got to get your analytics status set up. You have to, that is to get those behavioral insights and like the data from analytics is just the lowest hanging fruit. And we do work with people where we have to set that up. It's going to be trained and to how to use that. So I think that's the first step, really. That if it's low hanging fruit, that's got to be it. You can't do much without that, in a sense. So that would be the first one. The second one, maybe it doesn't have to be complicated. So like customer feedback doesn't have to be really complex. I mean, maybe collect regularly from customers some form of feedback. I think that's like a low-hanging fruit. Post-purchase survey, comments on social media, some form of small but impactful insights that can improve customer experiences. So if you don't have the budget or the internal resources to do, regular cadence usability testing or whatever it is that you're in the world of, then at least that can keep your finger on the kind of pulse, I suppose. What else? Did you ask for free? I don't remember.
Yeah, I asked for you low-hanging.
How about just competitor analysis, like market competitor analysis? That's really easy to do, and I think you can get many people doing that as well, and you can work together on that. So, service offerings, tactics for customer engagement, pricing strategies or something. Even like third-party tools like SEMrush, you can have an understanding of the landscape, right? Digital landscape, traffic sources, that kind of thing. So I think that's really easy and low-hanging fruit, is those kind of three things. And really what that is, now that I think back to it, is I'm just giving you the most basic form of behavioral insight, customer feedback, and kind of like market SEO stuff. Really, I guess that's what I've done there.
Got it. Wonderful. Thank you, Thomas, for all those questions. We do have a rapid fire section, so I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions, and I would expect rapid answers. But before that, before we jump into rapid fire, would love to understand. And this, I ask this question to a lot of people, right? It helps me also understand how people react to advices, right? Has anybody given you an advice while you were doing your research or in your professional field that really had an impact on how you look at this entire field or at life in broadly?
Let me clarify what you mean by that. So, advice that I received from someone who I'm doing research with, a participant, is that what you mean?
No, advice from anybody who are doing your PhD, or anybody who the advice might have an impact.
I see. Yeah. Good question. Many people give advice. I listen to everyone, and then I make my judgments from there. I mean, my PhD supervisor was incredible. I learned a lot from her. I think you're kind of alluding to it being about this space, so that wouldn't be too applicable. But yeah, I think the best advice is often not specific anyway. It's kind of like talking about who you want to become and how you're going to become the person that you admire and value. And so I had a lot of advice from my father's friends who are all in psychology and psychotherapy, coaching space. And so for me, that kind of advice, which is more broad and maybe existential, was more impactful than any kind of specific thing, because, we're in a very niche world, but what we bring to it as a human being is so much more than that. And I think as long as you're bringing your unique characteristics and your experience and who you are to what you're doing, that's the most important part. So I don't have a specific thing I remember to provide you and your listeners, but that's how I felt about previous advice.
Got it. Wonderful. Well, let's start with the our rapid fire questions. We have 8 questions. We'll expect quick answers to them. The first question, you good to go? Ready to start?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I'm not very quick at anything.
You're data driven, right? That's the thing. So
yeah, slowness.
So, the first question is, what's your go-to travel destination?
Oh, blimey, Taiwan. Simply because my wife is Taiwanese and we always travel there, but that was true before as well.
Got it. The next one is, if you were starting a career in CRO today, what is one thing that you would do differently?
I would probably have left academia sooner because you don't need all that education. You can just get going and get experience, work with people. And I think most of the gold comes from just being involved.
The next question is 3 books that you would recommend to our listeners.
Holy God, crikey.
Doesn't need to be 3, it can be 2. Or a book.
All right. This may be big. I'm going to be UX or CRO related. I don't think maybe that I would recommend. But Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. That's one of your key go-to books. I mean, it's one of the best-selling books worldwide. It was the first book my dad gave me. And it's a combination of looking at life and what it means and how you derive value from what you do, combined with his formulation of what he called logotherapy, which is really about meaning, essentially. So that's definitely a go-to book. I really enjoyed, I'm just going to pluck it out of my head, Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain, if I was going to go with a novel, because I don't know why, it must have been the right time, right place, but it's a fantastic novel. It's incredibly long. I remember not having much to do and just whiling away the days reading this book about a guy is sick, essentially, and goes up into the mountains, and it just reflects upon his sickness and his experience with mountain life. So that's a good one. Do they have to be any specific types of books, or is this just anything?
Oh, anything.
I feel like I should give a sci-fi one because I quite enjoy sci-fi. So there's a book by, I've forgotten exactly how you pronounce the name, Russian authors. It's called How to Be a God. And it's a book about history on another planet that's stuck in a medieval era. We send scientists there to study their culture, which is kind of like our culture from before. And so I thought that was a really good idea. And that stuck with me. So those are the 3 that surfaced from the depths of my brain, plunging upwards.
That's okay. The next question is there a single CRO metric that you wish people would stop obsessing over?
I was just thinking how funny it would be if I said conversion rate. No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have one. I think that metrics are metrics. It's just like, choose the right one. It's not really about, I think what you measure is important, but how you use it is even more important. So just be wise and judicious in what you're doing. I suppose that would be my response to that.
Got it. The next question is, What do you think AI, and we have been talking a lot about AI, right? What do you think AI will definitely replace in the next 3 to 4 years?
Oh yeah, it needs to be quick. Probably Google searches. It's like anyone's using any or others. Yeah, any kind of like medial thing that normally takes a lot of time. Sketching out. I mean, this is very commonly said across everyone because it's like a safe prediction. No one wants to make an actually outlandish or wild prediction that goes wrong. But no one wants to be that person. So it's going to be all the like medial stuff, creating drafts and structures and wireframes and things that we don't really need to be involved with until later on. That or Google.
Got it. Got it. The next question is, I have two more questions. The next question is, if not what you do right now, would you have chosen another profession if you really went back to your undergrad days and done something else?
Oh, that's a good one. I've had many careers. So I started life as a professional musician, and then I went into science.
Interesting.
I think probably psychotherapy, because it's been in my life since I was like 7, and it's been a part of everything that I've done. And my dad has been involved with that for so long. So, for instance, I helped him set up the Psychosynthesis Trust in London when they first came to England in the 90s. And so I've always thought of myself as being someone who's quite good at listening to people and helping. I've never done it. I think I'm afraid of not being very good at that. So I've always I've kind of deferred to scientific inquiry because it seems a bit more logical and I can just hide behind the structure instead of the vagaries of the human mind.
Got it. The final question is there a goal or dream that you have that you want to achieve in the next 3 years? Professional or personal?
Wow, that's a good question. Ricky, that makes you think, doesn't it? If you can't answer that quickly.
Rapid fire.
I spend so much of my time helping other people realize that I don't stop to think about much. I don't know. I think, I'd like to be someone who is in a position where I've managed to combine all the things that I really care about in a meaningful way, because a lot of them are a little bit floating around, and I'd love to bring them together into something that I don't either have a vision to imagine right now, but something that's combining, coaching and psychotherapy and research, all of these things coming together in some really meaningful way that I don't know exists. That's what I want, but I don't know how to get there, so I'm just keep going,
Sure.
step by step.
Absolutely. We need to keep experimenting and sure you reach the goal.
It's just experimentation.
Exactly. Wonderful. Thomas, it was a pleasure chatting with you. Do you have any final thoughts for the audience before we wrap up the call?
No, it was a great experience. You can see how I don't really think quickly on my feet. It's been quite fun to see how much I squirm under pressure. So yeah, hopefully it's been enjoyable for people to listen to. And if anyone has any questions and wants to talk about anything ranging from psychology to CX, then just get in contact. I'm always around for great conversations.
Sure. It was great having you on this episode, Thomas. And thanks again for your time, your insights, all your stories. Listeners and viewers, we hope that you enjoyed the session. Stay tuned for more insightful conversations on the VWO Podcast. Thank you.